when he met me and we were talking, he literally said this to my face. He said, "You're so intelligent.
Mhm.
Why is it in the media they portray Black people not like that? I don't
Huh.
understand."
Hi, my name is Asha Bynoe-Berry. I am a BAYCAT studio intern and your host for this season's Backstory with BAYCAT. Today, we've invited Nisa Sanders, creative storyteller, academy manager, and media producer at BAYCAT. So yeah, thank you, Nisa, for being here.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. And I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, so we know you're a creative storyteller. You paint, you draw, produce, AD. So I guess to start, like, how did you first get into that, like, artistic side of yourself?
Yeah, I always say that, my mom was like, I was an artist, illustrator, teaching artist, and my dad was a jazz musician, turned videographer, well, first audio engineer, then videographer. So I didn't really have a choice not to be a creative. I was gonna swing hard, I feel like. It was either going to
Yeah.
like math and science or really
Yeah.
dive into the creative area, nature field. And that's where I ended up. And so I had a beautiful childhood where I was surrounded by artists, by people of color, creating constantly, up
Mhm.
probably way too late at night at jazz concerts, well, where my
Mhm.
dad was playing, or in museums on Sundays where my mom was teaching a workshop. So that really nurtured a creative spirit, and just meeting so many artists and being around them constantly. Our house is filled with art from my mother, friends, family members. So yeah, that's, I would say, definitely the birth
Yeah.
of my creative spirit. And then my mom and my dad, other family members, always had a love for film,
Mhm.
and media. So that
Yeah.
was like a strong introduction on all fronts to all things creative.
So how did you find your shift into like being interested more in like the ADing and more like technical side of filmmaking and stuff rather than like hands-on like painting and stuff?
I still like both.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
still paint. I still do visual arts.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that definitely feeds in like more the inspiration side, and it's more tactile and tangible. For example, like, so the series of paintings I'm working on
Mm-hmm.
are my way to deal with like inherited and intergenerational trauma, as well as
Mm,
like what's going on and has
mm-hmm.
always been going on in America, and
Right.
the destruction and violence on Black bodies. And so I found a very snarky way of doing that, and like researching Jet magazine covers and
Mm-hmm.
creating like this kind of fake magazine and painting these women, because Jet magazine used to have these girls of the week, and then they would
Okay.
have really cool like vibrant backgrounds, and then the girls a lot of times were black and white, so
Okay.
they juxtapose them, and they're in
Wow.
bikinis and smiling and stuff, and then um there's a
Mm-hmm.
headline next to them often that was like, "Well, Negroes die poor," or
Mm,
"Why Negroes are fleeing Mississippi."
yeah.
Just very serious things
Mm-hmm.
next to these like women. And they were all different
Yeah.
shades and sizes, and I just thought it was very interesting. So I was like, what's a contemporary update? So then I started taking those, making movie size, like movie poster size paintings, and putting headlines that were more today contemporary. So like,
Yeah.
um,
That's so cool.
with issue dates of each person, starting I think with Trayvon, killed
Okay.
by police. So like
Mm-hmm.
it never says their names, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
date, the issue date on the magazine
Oh, okay.
is
That's so
a different
clever.
person. So it was
Yeah.
my way of
Yeah.
like processing. And I view film the
Yeah.
same way as like, but when I say like what I guess my gravitation towards ADing is like,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely like had experience like DPing, shooting on 16 millimeter, or just various other cameras, and that part of me, it never appealed to me, like that part
Mm-hmm.
of like that technical
Yeah.
part of it. didn't speak to me, versus once I learned what an AD was and how they are like the bringer together of each department on set, and like that
Yeah.
communicator between the director and like making sure the director's vision
Yeah. Making it
gets
happen.
done, but making
Yeah.
it happen and
Yeah.
also interpreting and being this like liaison, I thought
Mm-hmm.
was just fascinating. And you get addicted to like the go, go, go,
Yeah.
and also enjoying telling people no.
Yeah.
And and that you got to keep it going,
You
like,
gotta
you
go.
know,
You have 5 minutes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your first AD project like? Like, you know, like how did you what was the moment you were like, you know what? I don't like DPing. There's something about ADing. Like, what was that project for you that like
I
made
would
that?
say AD, that probably
Uh-huh.
was in high school. I
Okay.
was lucky enough to go to like a performing arts high school, and
Mm-hmm.
they had a film track. And so once I got to do, I think when we first started to do it, like a film with sound and dialogue, I did my own project, but then worked with a friend on his, a classmate. And so then that's when I kept like helping other classmates on their work and really enjoyed that. And then we did
Yeah.
a foreign language film. It was a fun project, but that was, I think, realizing. And then we also went to Boston, and I AD'd a documentary where we talked to artists and street artists in Boston. And so, yeah, that gave me a lot
Just
of
doing that.
experience and
Yeah.
access. But
Mm-hmm.
I liked seeing the project. I love being on set, and I liked seeing the project come together. I realized that
Right.
directing, I was like, oh, it's all right, but I just thought it was a lot of pressure, and I still think directing is kind
Yeah.
of this like, it's a very hard role that people
Mm-hmm.
give like a lot of praise, and that like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's so many other people that go into
Yes.
like to making that director's vision come to light,
Mm-hmm.
that
100%.
yeah, we praise directors, but we
Yeah.
don't praise like, yeah, the ADs, the production
Everyone.
managers,
Yeah.
down to PAs are so
Yes.
important. Yeah, I think that's what I like learned. I was like, oh, an AD is kind of like really
Mm-hmm.
the glue that kind of holds each
Yes.
department together. And I think that was I just fell in love with the energy. I think there's nothing
Yeah.
like being on set. It's magic.
So internationally speaking, because you did study in Prague, which is awesome. Like, that's so cool. How would you say like representation was there, or your
Whew,
experience as a Black
yeah.
woman? Like, how was that?
I mean, coming from the South, like, I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
always like, San Antonio is predominantly a Latinx town, city, excuse me, and that,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was the one of two of Black kids, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in any school. So I'm used to, I'm used
Mm-hmm.
to walking into a room and not seeing people that look like me.
Mm-hmm.
So Prague
Yeah.
though was like the ultimate in
Yeah.
that there is not really any Black people in Prague. And so going there, people would stare, people would touch my hair, people would
No.
touch me. And
What?
I kind of knew, and like I was prepared a bit to understand, and understand why. Because if you're living in a country where you don't see people that look like,
Yeah, but it's
like,
like
I
you were
mean,
on display, and that's like terrible.
yeah,
Like, what
but
if?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Uh-huh.
yes, but
Mhm.
also like, to me it was very, I mean, I just learned a lot. I learned a
Yeah.
lot, and it was even in the program there
Uh-huh.
wasn't,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I was the only Black kid in the film
Yeah.
program. I just realized that.
Wow.
And so I think there was a lot of things going on for me. I always wanted to go to Europe. I went to that, I pretty much made the decision to go to American, because I
Mhm.
knew that they had a strong study abroad programs
Mhm.
all across the world, and they baked in time for your junior and
Mhm.
sophomore year for that to happen. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Prague, it's used a lot to shoot in general, like a lot of big Hollywood productions who want to shoot like in, say, Paris or London, because it looks like those
Oh.
places, but it's
Mhm.
significantly cheaper to film there.
Mhm.
So it has a rich film history because of that.
Mhm.
It has
Hmm.
a lot of huge studios, set prop departments, and so because of that, the film school was associated with that.
Okay.
So we had access to like I mean, this huge building that had like all these
Everything.
BBCUs, like costumes from the 50s, like period pieces and
Wow.
stuff that we got to go and shop through and like pick
Yeah.
stuff. We had access to like real actors. Like our lead actress in our film was just won an or she was in a film that won awards, you know, internationally. One actor, we went and like saw his play, and then after his play talked to him about being in our film. It was very cool and legit.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
What?
Yeah,
That's
it was a
awesome.
great program.
Just being in the middle of like a giant like movie studio, basically. Like
Yeah.
movie studio city. That's so cool.
But to
Wow.
answer your question more
Mm-hmm.
specifically, the guy, or one of the
Mm-hmm.
students who was like our audio engineer and did the sound for our film, we got paired up with like a grad student to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And when he met me and we were talking, he literally said this to my face. He said, "You're so intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it in the media they portray Black people not like that? I don't
Huh.
understand." And we had like a 2-hour conversation because he's like born and
Wow.
raised in Prague, and he just didn't understand. I was the first
Uh-huh.
Black
Oh my God, I have
person
like
he had
tears in my
ever
eyes.
met.
Yeah.
And like, and so that's what I mean when I learned so much of like, people don't realize the power of media and
Mm-hmm.
representation in that. Like, this is a person who's like never met
Mm-hmm.
a
A
Black
real
American,
Black person. Yeah.
has only seen media representing us, and couldn't believe how articulate I was, how
Mm-hmm.
much I knew about film, how much
Mm-hmm.
I knew just in like
Yeah.
he just didn't, and he
Yeah.
was just so, it was more than just confused. I could tell he was angry. He was just
Yeah.
like, why do they depict
Yeah.
y'all in this way? To have that conversation
Wow.
in my early 20s,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very interesting. And then
Mm-hmm.
to go like clubbing and other Black people to walk up to you and be so excited to see another Black person, and they were
Yeah.
French. Whenever
Yeah.
that would
Okay.
happen, they were on holiday and they were French, and they would
Mm-hmm.
just be like, they would start speaking in French to me as soon
Mm-hmm.
as they saw me, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
You're like, I don't
So,
know.
and then they would
Yeah.
literally hug me and just be like, I'm so happy just to
Oh
see another Black person.
my gosh.
So I learned so much from
Yeah.
studying abroad that had nothing to do with film, but at the same time had everything to do with it.
Everything. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, when people say
Uh-huh.
representation matters, it
It's
matters.
100,000%. That's such an amazing opportunity because you just learn so much about yourself and the world, like you said, and that representation is just, that's like lighting a fire, you know, like now I have even more to say, like, why does this man in Europe think that's how we are, you know? Like, wow, 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 wow. Because we've talked about, you know, Black horror films or just horror films in general. So
Yes,
I
yes,
would
yes.
love to talk to you more about your like upbringing into that like horror film life.
Yeah, I've
Mm-hmm.
always had a love for horror films, and I think that the ironically, it's like the beginning of that love affair was because my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather at a very young age, I was up late
Mm-hmm.
watching Chucky to like
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead to Hellraiser, all the
Wow.
Jason,
Mm-hmm.
with him, and he would make fun of it all through it, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about Black people like talking through movies and our
Yeah.
commentary and stuff. So like that was, and so he made it less like scary, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
fun, and he was often critiquing and like talking about like, look, baby, look at this white person. They're gonna go down this alley, and they shouldn't go. Look, they're dumb, you know. And you know, and it was fun. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was
Like an
funny, and it was
adventure.
fun.
Yeah.
That's where it started,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there, I just kept and watching, and I remember like, I want to say 12, 13. My dad
Mm-hmm.
took me and my friends to go see The Ring when it came out, messed me up.
Yeah.
And but also I liked that it
Yeah,
messed me
I
up.
was gonna say.
I liked it. And
There's
then that was the
something, yeah.
thing. There's
Mm-hmm.
something great, right? There's something
Yeah,
great
there's
about
something
like,
about it. Horror films, they have this like, it's like a direct connection to like all of your emotions. Like something in your heart
exactly.
like feels everything, like that suspense, whatever you're seeing. You know what I mean? That audio visual connection is just so like,
But it also
yeah.
makes sense because of the connection of like
Yeah.
the Black experience and the horror that we
Yes.
deal with all the time. I think that's the other thing is when you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly scared, you're constantly like
Mm-hmm.
knowing something bad can happen to you, and there's
Yeah.
not like the likelihood of justice or something,
Uh-huh.
like I also
Yeah.
not gonna lie, I kind of enjoy watching white people
Mm-hmm.
get killed. Like, and that's
Yeah.
one of the times it
Mm-hmm.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this
Yeah.
kind of fulfillment. It sounds messed up,
Yeah.
but it is what it's true. It's
No, it
true,
makes sense. It makes it makes a ton of sense because, like, how you're saying with like generational trauma and finding those outlets, like how you're making this the Jet series, like finding these. It might be weird to some people, and that's okay because they don't understand the life we live as Black people. But it's like we have to have these outlets, or else we're gonna constantly be in our heads, like really thinking, every day is gonna be a bad day or something. You know what I mean? Like, so that makes total sense. Like having that connection to that in like horror films and like letting ourselves kind of like release that energy. That's
exactly. It's a
yeah.
catharsis, and I
It's
think that's
yeah.
why
It's like
Get Out.
yeah.
So many people
Yes.
related to it. Even white people
Yes.
related it to it because
Uh-huh.
there was a catharsis, right? Of
Yeah.
like
And
when
us
you even
too, yeah.
yeah, and us
Mhm.
and like finally
Yeah.
seeing that part of it, like that
Yeah.
part of our story, and like in
Yeah.
this yeah. And I think the horror lens allows for us to, I think that's the beauty of like
Mhm.
Lovecraft Country too, is like
Mhm.
they're giving you a lot of these real historical horrible things, but
Yes.
because it's in this kind of horror fantasy lens,
Mhm.
you can take it in a lot more easily. Imagine if
Mhm.
that series was straight like Roots.
Right,
Like
right.
I wouldn't watch it, and I
Yeah.
couldn't do it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Mhm.
because of that, I think it's
Mhm.
easier for you to to
Digest
go to
and yeah.
digest and go through
Mhm.
it. And I'm so excited to see like more Black people get into horror. I think that horror
Yeah.
is beautiful in a way of a genre because it kind of takes on all these other genres
Mhm.
together to
Yeah.
make a horror film. And a horror films, most of the time you're gonna cry. Most of the time you're gonna be like, oh, there's maybe a little
Mhm.
romance in there. Most of
Mhm.
the time, I mean, it's
It's
genre
everything.
bend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything. And for those that are really like successful, they hit on all of those really well.
A lot of people have like this, this saying or whatever, like horror is a good way to get into the industry
Yeah.
because it's like you said, it's so like it encompasses a lot, and because it is hard for Black filmmakers to just have that overall like recognition. A rapper said Black people have to use our trauma in order to like just be heard. Like our trauma is
Hmm.
our selling point. Like that's he said in order
Mm.
to like get recognition, like it seems like that's the only thing that's selling.
Hmm.
And it's kind of crazy that I don't know he would say that because you think like Get Out or Us or like I don't know, even in music sometimes like R&B, there's always some kind of like toxic story, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's weird
No.
to say, but I feel like now with these horror films that we're seeing and Lovecraft Country and all of that, they're kind of shifting that in a way. Like, yes, we have a lot to say. Yes, we have these terrible stories, but we're still artists at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So you're gonna watch it, like come, like be included in this story, like digest this, immerse yourself in this, like yeah,
I think to that point, Black
yeah,
people's trauma is Americans' trauma. That's the
right,
thing. It's not that, and I think that's what's
okay,
also why it's relatable. Why white
mhm,
people can watch Get Out
mhm,
and it impacts them,
yeah.
or Lovecraft Country because
Mhm.
it's America's trauma.
Right, right,
Like it's all of our trauma.
right.
So
True.
it's yeah. So I think that that's the other thing is like
Mhm.
we have to be able to talk about race. We have to be able to
Yeah,
talk about this trauma.
yeah.
And I think horror gives it a way to, yeah, that lens makes it a little bit more digestible for everybody.
Mhm. So when did you come to the Bay and like your BAYCAT story? Like, what was that? Was that like after Prague? Did you go back to Texas?
After getting out of retail, realizing, okay, like let's go somewhere else. Let's see, let's see what happens. So I'd saved
Mhm.
up a good amount of money. kind of got back into film and media. I was at a museum telling their story through film and video and doing social media management, and kind of moved to California on a whim. Didn't know anybody other than my roommate I had met while studying abroad in Prague. And so in California, I worked at this like cool pop-up that was an intense and crazy experience called Color Factory, and was an onboarding manager there, and met people and made connections. And then I was at an art center in Richmond, California, and that's a coworker there was like, hey, have you heard of this nonprofit that does video, and they work with young people? Seems up your alley. Friend of mine, she was saying, like, has worked there for years. I'm going to connect y'all on Facebook, and they're hiring. We connected on Facebook, started talking, and then I applied, and I got a phone interview, and then got the role. It's been great to like work with beautiful young people and see that passion, and like knowing I was like, I had a gift of a creative childhood, but BAYCAT's very unique in that it's, you know, it's allowing a space for BIPOC youth to be together, and young women, and doesn't matter your orientation or how you choose to identify gender wise. It's this like safe space to create, but it's also like very much like deadline driven, which I liked. It was hands on, and it was like workforce development, and that the equity and pay, and that like we're paying you to learn, we're paying you to create and produce. It's not just like a kickback where you like you get to create, which that was more my experience, and that it was like access, which was great, and exposure, but not the monetary of like this could be a job, you know, and
or
like,
something
and
to propel you into it. 100%. So
the fact to be a part of that is very beautiful, and I'm very grateful.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that's so cool that like you found BAYCAT, especially with like you were saying, like your experience as a young creative, and having that experience in Prague, and just like this is another outlet for you to like put young people on, and to let them know like you don't have to just be what you see on the media. You can be this, and this. You can get a job in that. You can have your voice. You can have people that actually take you seriously in your craft, you know? Because that's one thing I feel like I relate to you in that like post-grad life. Just finding actual like people in the industry to take your story seriously, or take you seriously, versus like non-Black POC people who just kind of right off the bat, they're just like in there doing this and that and that. So that hasn't changed much, unfortunately. But you know, that's why we have places like BAYCAT and spaces like this that are like, you know, we're coming. And we're here, and you can't do anything about it, you know what I mean? So other than your series with like the Jet magazine, and you know, speaking through that, do you have any other like specific projects that you'd like to share?
When I'm in the research and development phase for a feature that is horror. Surprising.
Okay.
But looking into like witchcraft and spirituality and Black women leaving, like there's Black women have this kind of exodus from the church into more spiritual practices, such as like crystals and
like Daughters of the Dust kind of.
Well, like tarot cards, just like Black women in general realizing that like leaving Christianity and not feeling like not like, because we're born and raised in it, and that's, you know, we're ingrained in that, and exploring other methods. And not just like, I mean, there's Black women converting to like Judaism, Buddhism, like I mean, all different types of stuff. And I think that's fascinating. But also, like, I guess specifically, I've always had like an affinity and interest in like occult things and witches and stuff. So I thought it'd be cool to like look at racism and trauma and Black women through that lens. With horror. And so I've been looking at things, and I haven't really seen that. I feel like Coven, maybe like the American Horror Stories Coven kind of touched on it with Angela Bassett's character, and looking at voodoo and stuff, and I was really like
a little taste intrigued of where that could go. I'm excited to see what you have to show us, Nisa. Like, that sounds awesome. No, for real. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah, I think it's always going to be painting or drawing or whatever, and film is always there. I think it's just always been hard to find that one project and really like see it through. I think that's
yeah.
really hard for creatives to do in general. And then with
Yeah.
film, that's very intimidating. It's very
Yes.
like it's such a
Yeah.
long process, you
It
know.
is.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
encourage like young filmmakers or just creatives in general, like to just, my advice is just to do it. I think if I could go back and talk to myself when I was in high school or, you know, even in college, and just being like, hey, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Just do it. Try it. Do it. Try it. Try it. Try it. Because I feel like that's the other thing, is like filmmaking is almost like a muscle. You got to exercise it. You got to just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Definitely.
And then you learn from your mistakes, right? Filmmaking is also problem solving.
I would say, yes, filmmaking is like one of the hardest things. People think it's so easy, just have a camera, have a script, whatever, but it's like, no, you put your whole foot, your heart, your tears, everything into it. So yeah. So, would you like to share any like social media or your website or anything like that?
You're more than welcome to follow me on the gram. I'm forever opalized. I'm a proud Libra. Opal's my birthstone.
Wait, I'm gonna follow you right now.
My dad's a Gemini. But yeah, if you ever like looked at anything that's opalized, it's like the most prettiest thing on earth. So that's where the title comes from. Follow me there. I'll be posting projects and stuff there.
Okay. Oh, it was so great. Okay, this is so awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Much it. That's all the time we had.
Great talking with you.
Yes, you as well. Thanks for joining us today on Backstory with BAYCAT. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe and leave a review for our podcast. All social media handles and website links mentioned are in the show notes below. Until next time, stay creative.